Hello, everyone. My name is Javy Galindo, pronounced like Navy, but with a J. Welcome to our Humanities 1 course, Creative Minds. So this week in the discussion boards, I had you introduce yourselves and give us a sense for who you think you are. And what I'd like to do is give you a sense for who we are. Who are we? Who will we be as students and myself as an instructor in this class? To get to that answer, we have to ask the question, well, what is a humanities class in the first place? We're a humanities class that's taking a look at creativity, so we better figure out what the humanities are. Well, here is one definition if you were to take a look at the Webster Dictionary. They define it as those branches of knowledge, such as philosophy, literature, and art, that are concerned with human thought and culture, the liberal arts. What do you think? Do you have a sense for what the humanities are based upon that definition? It gives you a few sorts of courses and disciplines that fall under this umbrella that we call the humanities, but do you really have a sense for what the humanities study? Well, maybe not so much. Here's another definition that used to be found in the Princeton website. Um, Now, though, you can still find it on places like vocabulary.com. It was a relatively popular definition of creativity back in the day, of humanities back in the day. These are studies intended to provide general knowledge and intellectual skills rather than occupational or professional skills. So, what does that sound like to you? I mean, if you were to tell your parents what the humanities were based upon this definition, how might they react when they hear studies intended to provide general knowledge and intellectual skills rather than occupational or professional skills? Well, for a lot of people, for a long time, this was the typical understanding of the humanities. And oftentimes, people imagine graduates in this degree ending up homeless, living in a van, not having a job. If they're lucky, they're able to sing at the street corner or maybe get together in a commune and sing kumbaya all day. Well, is that really what we are about? Is this really what would happen to a humanities major? Maybe not so much. If we really take a close look at what the humanities are about, this definition might get us a little closer. They are studies of human attempts to understand our relationship to ourselves, to others, to our past, to the future, to nature, and to God. Think about that for a second. What can you tell about what it is we look at in the humanities based upon this definition? Studies of human attempts to understand our relationships to ourselves, to others, to our past, to the future, to nature, and to God. Doesn't that pretty much cover a lot of what it means to be human? So, a central question that the humanities look at is, what does it mean to be a human being? When we take a look at this report that was put together by a commission on the humanities, right? The government put together a group of people to go figure out, well, when colleges say they're teaching the humanities, what exactly are they doing? This is what the report said. Through the humanities, we reflect on the fundamental question, what does it mean to be human? The humanities offer clues, but never a complete answer. They reveal how people have tried to make moral, spiritual, and intellectual sense of a world in which irrationality, despair, loneliness, and death are as conspicuous as birth, friendship, hope, and reason. Take a look at that last sentence one more time. We, as people studying the humanities, we care about or look into questions about the nature of being a human, but the nature of what it means to live a human life and what that's like. Well, how's that different than, let's say, biology or physics or psychology? All of those sciences. Well, those are all objective in a sense, right? But here, when we take a look at this last sentence, what is it? What's the nitty gritty of what we do in the humanities. They reveal how people have tried to make moral, spiritual, and intellectual sense of a world in which irrationality, despair, loneliness, and death are as conspicuous as birth, friendship, hope, and reason. What does that refer to? As conspicuous as birth, friendship, hope, and reason. Have you ever noticed that life sucks every once in a while? Have you ever noticed that sometimes you get into accidents that are no fault of your own, or your computer crashes while you've been working for hours on a project and then you've lost everything, or how you get sick, right the night right before a big exam, or how you have a loved one that passes without any notice. Seemingly, our lives are full of irrationality, things that don't make any sense, despair, loneliness, and death. And those are as common as birth, friendship, hope, and reason. The human life is one full of not just ups and rewards and successes, but it's a life full of suffering and turbulence and failures. If we take a look at the world religions, they all point to how the human condition is one in which we go through ordeals, we overcome bondage, we deal with suffering and bear our cross seemingly on a consistent basis. It's remarkable how humans survive at all when it's so easy just to quit, right? When life gives us so many downs and so much to despair over, how is it that we persevere and have the motivation to live on? This is getting towards the heart of what we look at in the humanities. Let's take a look at what Einstein says, scientist, physicist Albert Einstein says about the humanities. They are knowledge and he says knowledge and skills alone cannot lead humanity to a happy and dignified life. Humanity has every reason to place the proclaimers of high moral standards and values above the discoverers of objective truth. Now, what does he mean here by this discoverers of objective truth? I mean, objective truth is truth that's out in the world, truth that's independent of our experience. It doesn't matter what perspective you have or what culture you're in. Objective truth refers to something that's true in the world, regardless of your point of view. Well, who discovers those sort of things? Well, they're scientists, right? We talked about biology and psychology and physics and chemistry. These are all sciences that look at objective truths. And when we take a look at objective truths, we see something outside of ourselves. But what is it that allows us to look inwards? What discipline asks questions about how we can live life well? Well, that's the humanities. As Einstein says, he places the proclaimers of high moral standards and values above the discoverers of objective truth. And here is somebody that is a discoverer of objective truth. So in humanities, we ask questions like, what should you value? How should you live your life? What should you want out of it? Seemingly pretty important questions. What humanity owes to personalities like the Buddha, Moses, and Jesus ranks for me higher than all the achievements of the inquiring and constructive mind, says Einstein. In other words, science can tell you how to clone a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but those of us studying the humanities, well, maybe we can tell you why this might not be a really good idea. So, are you getting a clearer sense then of what we do in the humanities? In a nutshell, the humanities is the name for a broad umbrella that covers all of these sorts of disciplines that reveal what it is that makes humans unique, right? When we take a look, we create history, right? We create art, we philosophize and come up with ingenious ideas, and we create music, and we write stories to tell each other. We create buildings and big structures that are aesthetically pleasing. We create choreography for dance. We document in film, or we portray stories with music and visuals on film. If you haven't noticed, being uniquely human means you create in the world. Tables, pencils, your wall, they don't necessarily create on their own, right? We call them inanimate. What makes us human isn't just that we walk around and breathe, but that we make change in the world. We bring new things into the world. So in our class, we aren't just going to take a look and see what creativity looks like. We're not going to just stare at our computer screens and expose ourselves to various examples of creativity, though we'll do that too. But the goal for the class is for you to get your hands dirty. You will participate in projects and do things in order to develop skills that will allow you to be more creative than you might feel you are right now. The goal is to develop our brain and our minds in a way that we are more able to be creative, because that's what we do naturally. You've done that naturally. But if you've noticed, sometimes it's not so easy to do when we want. So the whole course is geared to developing those skills, developing that skill of mind in order to create, to manifest something new, which means everything we're learning will be learning geared towards a final project at the end of the term. So, what can this final project be? Just about anything you want. You can create anything you want that's legal. You can imagine why I have to put that in there, right? So, examples from past students? Well, here's one. Some students want to write stories or poems. Some students enjoy creating visual art, like you see here and here and here. Some students created their own jewelry. So, if you notice, there's something interesting or particularly interesting about how this student created their jewelry. They created it out of bottle tabs. Some students create their own YouTube channels, or they try to market their current YouTube channels, or they'll use the class to try to creatively rearrange their YouTube channels. Some students in our class just create their own films, their own short films, and it doesn't really matter if they had any experience in the past. If there's something you want to do, if there's something that you've had in the back of your mind that would be great or a lot of fun for you to make, this is your chance to do it. If you've ever had a dream of starting something, a business, a big art project, a book, I mean, this is your chance to do it, get support for it, and get credit for it. You don't have to complete or finish whatever it is you have in mind. Whatever it is you end up at the end of our 6 weeks, that's what you made. Some students, actually a lot of students, end up rapping in our class. We have tons of people that love to rap for some reason. This particular student told me that he often got scared while watching scary films. So he created this device where, as the movie got scarier and scarier, he would change the portal in which he watches the movie, through which he watches the movie. And if you notice, he even created a little tray here for his drinks and popcorn. This student was a big fan of socks, but also a big fan of slippers. So they combined the two in a way and created their own sock slipper. I don't know if you can see here, but there's space for toes to come out, be seen. This student wanted a creative way of watering their herbs, so they created this device. You can't really see it here, but there is a water container up here, and they could just turn the knob and allow the water to flow and rain down onto the herbs and flow and rain down to the herbs, and then the excess water would enter into this container. I had a student that was a big fan of being productive, as I move my face. So they decided, I'm going to create something that will allow me to do homework while waiting at the bus stop. So they had a sack, and they attached something to the sack that would allow them to place their laptop. So here is a fold-out little table that they could use to place their laptops. They put the bag over themselves, place the laptop table out in front of them, and they could work on their laptops while they're at the bus stop. This student, as I move my face one more time, this student was a graphic designer and created their own Pokemon card. I'm not too sure if that sort of thing is still around, but hopefully you're familiar with this. And they were kind enough to create one for me. So lots of cool ideas. This student was a frequenter of raves. I have never been to one. I'm not too sure what they're like, but according to him, it's very it's a place where you'd like to record things. So he wanted to create a stick that could hold his GoPro. You could obviously buy these, but he wanted to create his own because he wanted to create one that would glow in the dark. So that's what he did. He created his own glow in the dark GoPro stick. So as I mentioned, this is your chance to create anything you want. Any sort of dream you've had, any sort of idea you've had, any business idea, this is your chance to explore it. Use what we're going to be learning in our class and apply it to making whatever dream you have, whatever goal you have, whatever desire you have come to fruition. But keep one thing in mind. The idea here isn't just to learn how to make something. The idea is that by going through this process and making something tangible, right? You're physically making something, you would have gotten a really clear sense of what the creative process feels like. You've gone through it before, you've made stuff in the past, but now you'd be conscious of the process, become so aware of how it works that you'll understand it. And the hope is that when you understand the creative process by going through your project, you'll better see how you go through that process on a continual basis in your life. And by being aware of that process, hopefully you'll be able to navigate through the ups and downs of creating your life as you move through it on a daily basis. Because every day that you make a choice, aren't you creating a new you? Aren't you creating a new life by deciding what to eat, where to spend your time, where to spend your money? You are altering your life and creating a new one, and you are changing yourself. But sometimes that's not so easy to do. If you have a goal of who you want to be, obstacles often get in our way, right? So understanding this process, hopefully, will allow you to navigate the ups and downs, the obstacles, in order for you to get to that place, to where and who you want to be. So who are we then, as students and as a teacher, in a class called Creative Minds within the umbrella of the humanities? Well, we're investigators of what it means to be authentically human. In other words, we're trying to figure out what it means to be authentically you. And we'll do that by trying to understand human creativity. But that brings up another question, doesn't it? If we're trying to figure out what this class is about, it's good to understand what the humanities are, but now we have to understand what creativity is. And that's what you'll be learning about in our next module.